So today I'm very, very happy and feel blessed to have on here my good friend Dario Napoli, who is joining me all the way from Italy and has agreed to have this conversation with me today. Dario is a good friend of mine who I've known for now many years now.
Definitely. I think, I believe 2010 or 11 or yeah.
Yeah. And I was very fortunate. I was working with another music mentor, and I met Dario in that community, and we kept in contact and kept in touch. I'm very glad, and it's been such a joy to see his progress in his own music career. And so, Dario, I'm so glad to have you here. Dario is a now at this point world-renowned Gypsy Jazz Guitarist.
Wow, mate. Thank you very much. First of all, it's my absolute pleasure. Yes, you basically got to know me when that was probably around those years or a bit earlier, but those were the years where I was really starting to make a serious push, I guess, and kind of clearing my mind in terms of what my goals were. And, Gypsy Jazz was the music that I wanted to establish myself in. And
yeah, well, Dario, it's just always impressed me. And working with you over the years, there was several years where you and I were meeting regularly, talking via Skype on calls. But it was always really awesome to see that you were always dedicated to the goals that you had set out. So why don't you talk real quickly about what were your musical goals and what are you seeing that you're enjoying the results of nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, basically right around, those years or a bit earlier, I guess I sort of gained some clarity in terms of what I wanted out of music. And so I really, really started thinking in terms of where I wanted to arrive. And, basically there's a pretty vast circuit of festivals and venues that are, the principal stages for this kind of music. And of course, like everything, you start out, from zero. So, of course, a lot of it is the practice and the time on the instrument, but then also visiting those places and really getting to know the environment, really getting to know a lot of people. And then, of course, the work that, what you need to do on social media and on overall on the web, so it's a sort of 360-degree effort. Those years, maybe 2009, 2010 were the years where I really started understanding that and therefore organizing my day, around that. And right now I would say, if I look back at those years, it's kind of funny. Yeah, the names that I used to, study and idolize, and a lot of them now are my friends, and I'll be playing festivals with them. But it's a process for sure. Yeah.
So you set out basically, in a nutshell, to achieve a career where you can play at different festivals and working with different guitarists and musicians that you admired. You are now seeing these results start to happen. Could you just tell us a few stories of some of the results specifically? Who are you working with now? What does that mean to you to have accomplished that?
Wow, yeah, that's. But for example, last year I played on the smaller stage, but it's still the Samoa Django Fest, which is the principal one in the world, where Django, passed away, and then it's been almost 50 years now. This festival, it's the main reunion every year, and last year, for the first time, I was able to play on the smaller stage, but with the rhythm section of some very famous guys in this field, which is Mathieu Chatelin and, guys that like I said, I've been following for many years. Then again, last year I played Eddie Lang Jazz Festival with another very famous player called Sébastien Gignot, and really amazing to meet them and see them up close. This year I'll play that festival again with Paulus Schaefer, which is another, he's actually a true gypsy, and a good friend who was also on my last record now. He's a really good friend. And, over the years, it's been a lot of these situations, which, like I said, a lot of it is, the instrument practicing, a lot of it is creating the premises to develop that relationship. When you meet them, it's not just obviously as me and about the playing. There's a lot of social skills, I guess, and the right timing of things that needs to come to place. Like I said, for me, I still consider it an ongoing thing. I don't, by any means, I still have, like you, like all of us, just some specific goals and timelines for those goals, which, I think is crucial.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. yet I still think it's very important, an important function of being effective and even successful, to really be able to say, yeah, you know, I've achieved some goals that I wanted, and now I may have new goals, but, you know, I really got somewhere. And, you know, and I have been seeing that about you, that, you know, you have been achieving these goals. And for a moment now, just because some of the people may not be as familiar with the world of Gypsy Jazz,
Sure.
could you say a little more about kind of the history of it, Django, and what the legacy of Django Reinhardt, and what that means for you and other people in your world?
Sure. Well, if people might obviously know who Woody Allen is, Woody Allen made a movie a few years ago now. It's called Sweet and Lowdown, which wasn't really wasn't necessarily it wasn't necessarily a bio, but it was a very close sort of depiction of a lot of things that happened in Django's life. Django was just simply put a gypsy who lived between 1910 and 1953, and he's one of the few responsible to have brought guitar, you know, from actually he started with banjo, but basically, the string instrument was mostly a rhythm instrument, you know, in those years, and he was sort of one of the first, along with Charlie Christian and others, to bring the guitar forth as a soloing instrument. And there was a lot of myth around the guy, because he also had, you know, was a victim of this crazy accident when he was 18, where he burned a lot of his body and his 2 fingers. So he was bedridden for about 18 months. And since the guitar is lighter than the banjo, he went to the guitar because of that, because he could practice laying down on his bed. And sort of reinvented for himself a way to play with 2 fingers, mostly. He would use these 2 fingers for chords, but he couldn't really move them, and then these 2 fingers for single notes. And so that added on to the, you know, mystique. And then, of course, he was an amazing musician who played piano and violin, and who, you know, toured with Duke Ellington, and was also a very strange character in many ways, but had a very brief life. You know, died at 43, but really for those years also recorded an immensity of sides, as they were called back then, you know. And so he's really, you know, he's probably one of the guys that influenced guitar more than even most guitarists even know about today, especially the rock guys. You know, they might overlook, but, you know, they might not even know, but they're using a lot of things that he brought forth. So, yeah.
Well, and also what you're saying is clearly he arrived at a very opportune point in history, which was the onset of the recording age.
Yeah.
And capitalize that and be a pioneer in that.
Definitely. He recorded, you know, really throughout his entire youth, pretty much after 16. And then he essentially, you know, was very much respected by all the American players that would come to Paris, you know, the American jazz players that were coming to Paris. They all sort of eventually wanted to play with him, or, you know, recorded with him, you know, Coleman Hawkins and, you know, Louis Armstrong and all that era. So it was and the funny thing is that he never set out to create gypsy jazz. You know, he was just a guy that was trying to play jazz, and then inadvertently created a new style that was kind of developed after him, really, just because of how he approached it. But it was totally not intentional. I mean, his is just a mix of his background and his influence of classical and European music and gypsy music but he was just trying to play jazz, you know. So.
Well, yeah, you know, I, as an artist myself, I've seen from day one the inadequacy of labels. You know, of course I saw the movie, and I remember enjoying the movie. For those of you who are listening to this, you know, you might want to check it out, Sweet and Lowdown. Sean Penn, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's also this joke about Sean Penn's character being, what is it, the second most famous gypsy jazz guitarist after Django?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah. And you are following in the footsteps, you and other gypsy jazz musicians, of Django. Could you say a word about what that means to you in your life to have dedicated yourself to this ideal and this dream?
Yeah, for me personally, I started out with, blues and rock, and I had my heavy metal years, and then came jazz, and but I never sort of embraced. I mean, I did in phases. I embraced various kinds of music, but then always wanted to mix them. But this was sort of when I really said, wait, this is it. I think I've found exactly what the music that for me has all the elements that I care to hear in music. I guess the easiest way to think of it is I started thinking about it as an athlete would, or maybe not as an athlete, but more like as a really trained classical musician, where there's definitely a physical side that needs to be constantly ironed out and well oiled. And of course, that's not the only thing about it. It's just that's the support for all of it. So just as a classical musician, you need to have that facility technically, but then also that you want to try to not only give weight to that side, and obviously there's the feeling side and the improvisation side of jazz. So that became, like you said, it's sort of a life calling where I pretty much organize my entire day around it, whether it's directly on the instrument, and when I'm not on the instrument, it's setting up the premises for me to be able to be on the instrument, whether it's website, whether it's, social media, whether it's emails, booking, and all of it, But the musical side, I mean, for me is it has, like I said, the technical proficiency of classical music. It has the improvisational side of jazz. It has the passion of a lot of South American influenced music, whether it's tango or even salsa to some extent. So it has that Latin element. So to me, of course, it's a very well-rounded music that contains a lot of elements that I consider to be the most interesting ones in music.
So you basically identified your love for this music, and then you committed 1,000%, organized your entire life around it. You basically just said, this is what I love, this is who I am, and I'm dedicating myself with a focus that just total and absolute. Any more you want to say about that or add to that?
Yes, I mean, the funny thing is that it really was effortless in a way. Like, it wasn't difficult once there was the clarity of the goals, and once there was a sincere, obvious feeling, that this was for me, then it wasn't really difficult to do so, of course. But for a lot of people, it would be definitely extreme. It would be kind of like a monk setting out to some cave somewhere. But in honesty, it's for me, I live it in the sort of the country. It really gave a certain simplicity to my life, and I was able to get rid of a lot of distractions, and it sort of feeds itself. Like I still feel that same energy and passion. I just today was one of those few days where I didn't have a lot of other things to do, and I basically practiced from 9 a.m. to on and off about 7 p.m. working on the instrument, because of course when I can, for me it's a luxury to be able to spend time on that. And of course tomorrow I'll have other things to do, and not every day I can do that, but I sort of feel truly blessed and wish that anybody and everybody could really find that kind of calling where their life becomes clear in terms of what they want for them.
Yeah. And just to kind of spell it out in case people don't get this, when you talk about that kind of monastic kind of dedication, you practiced 8 hours a day or more for years, yes? Yes, most definitely, yeah. I mean, I've played obviously all my life. I pretty much started, when I was about 8, and I quit, and I did 12. After 12 years old, I was always on the instrument, but never like with the same intensity and quality of the last 7-8 years, I'd say, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because when I met you, you had done tennis competitively, right? Yeah. Yeah. And, being in America for college and doing various things, you had that clarity, but I kind of met you at a good time to see the journey transpire. Like gold, it just transformed. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. So when you
Yes.
find something that you love, that is who you are, you're willing, putting 8 hours a day to it is really not that much. And most people simply do that anyway, but it's called a job.
Right.
Okay, you just adopted that for your calling rather than someone else's business that you go work for, as many people do, obviously. Any more you want to add about that?
Oh man, thanks. It's true that you caught me at that time when, I had sort of, I guess, started pushing the cart, as so to speak. But yeah, I think it sort of snowballed in these years that you could see, it just makes me think that a lot of times when people speak, there's with music as well, but with other things, it's like there's a feeling that there's a time, there's an age limitation and time, and I'm not going to go as far as saying that I'm living proof that that's wrong, but I have witnessed, even just with myself, that it's just not necessarily so. If there's the right amount of intention and the right real true feeling and organization as a consequence of that, most people believe that I've been playing this music since I was 6 years old, and when I tell them that it's not so, they don't believe it, but it's the truth. It's the intention and the quality. It's more, I can see that, in my experience,
Well, one thing that we've talked about is the power of thought, the power of intention. And since we met, you and I have both been probably equal fans of such things, like the book Think and Grow Rich, for example, which I know you read.
Yes.
The power of thought, when it all comes down to whether or not you allow yourself to believe that you can have something. It's not about your age. It's certainly not about your circumstances, although what you do with your time is important. But
sure.
when you believe you can have something, you take the actions to make your life, situate your life so that you have time for it. And you clearly are living proof of that, is what you're saying. And yeah, absolutely. It's a great inspirational story. And I think your desire and belief in yourself is more important than circumstances.
I could not agree more. It's something that I actually, learned a lot as a kid. Like you said, I played tennis competitively, and I think that also really helped me to transfer a lot of those skills and a lot of that mindset into music once music became the thing, so to speak. But that's another field where it's a lot of the quality of your intensity and your quality of your intention and the quality of your time, that makes the ultimate difference.
Yeah. The mentor that I met you, we're working with, he would say things like, invest your time, don't spend your time. Clearly you were investing your time to the maximum. What does that mean to you to see the fruits of your labor, to see this process, that it actually is working? You are achieving things you had talked about a few years back. What does that mean to you now?
Well, in total honesty, man, it actually just gives me more gasoline, so to speak, and more energy, for the next, like you said, phases and next goals. It's just, going into the next goals, having known what has worked in the past and having seen it work, just, gives you that extra confidence that maybe you didn't have starting out. When I started out, I was reading and Think and Grow Rich and hoping that it was all true, having faith, but now you sort of have that precedent that you can lean on and you can look back to, that is like having a bit more wind in your sail, obviously, because as you go along, also there's a standard, the way I look at it now is, if I want to match up with these great players and still improve as a player and still improve as a social media musician and all that, it's just like when you get closer to the tip of a pyramid, it's even more about the quality of of what you do. So it's true that you've conquered some things, but if the next one is going to be obviously a bit harder. So really the thing is, it's just, it gives you that extra confidence knowing that you've been able to do it before. And if you did XYZ, you got to this. So I'm going to just do XYZ again in a different context and shoot, fire, aim, as our friend Tom Hess would say, and just know, have faith in the process.
So speaking of that, why don't you just quickly tell us what is next for you? You mentioned it before we started this interview. What is next for Dario Napoli?
For me now, it's basically, I went from a few years ago not being able to, have any festival or serious festival appearances, to now having several per year. My next goal at this point is to have several per month. I have certain months that are, that are really good in terms of that caliber of festivals. Like really the August festivals will be in Italy. There's the Eddie Lang Jazz Festival, which I played last year. That'll be a really good one. And then in October, I'll be playing a few festivals in Brazil. Again, this was somewhere I was 3 years ago and was able to, again, leverage that relationship and, really, really good, theaters and really cool festivals. And the week after, so it's 3 weeks in Brazil, and the week after I'll be at, for the third year in a row, in Ireland again for the Django Sir Lennon, which is the festival there. And there'll be some just amazing roster of players there, a lot of guys that I idolized and now I'm, I guess, friends with. It's really great, but then November is, so as of now I have nothing, so that keeps me a bit like there's room for growth. I just keep
right. Well,
I'd love it. Yeah,
maybe at the moment, but it's just the beginning of June, so obviously you just hit the pavement like to do, and then you believe it and you'll manifest it. It's so awesome to hear. And things you would talk about in theory a few years back, wanting to tour internationally, be able to do teaching workshops, now and then while doing these great festivals, and now you're doing these things is
right.
really, really awesome. And before we conclude, I would feel totally remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity. Would you please, Dario, play something for us?
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, because it's right here, of course. Here we go. I don't know if it's...
Alrighty, and what did we have the pleasure of hearing right now?
Oh, actually, I was just messing around in the little improv, yeah.
Nice. And you are also a composer in your own right. And your last album has how many original pieces on that album?
Definitely, yeah. The last album, which is called My Favorite Spot, has 9 tracks, and 7 of those are my compositions. Yeah, so definitely, I love to write, and it's I think it's a lot of fun to be able to come up with your songs for sure. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I also got to say, anybody watching this, you should check out his video sessions, live studio sessions from the new songs from his new album. They are awesome from when he recorded these. And what was it, a 2-day period?
Actually, it was just 1 day. All those songs, it was a goal of mine to be able to do the CD in 1 day and be able to videotape all the takes of the songs in order to really, partly because I wanted to prove that what's on the CD is as pure as can be as alive, and also because it was a personal goal of mine that I had never done.
Yeah, well, definitely support Dario. You're, the best way to support you, I imagine, buy the CD, support his music, hire him, bring him to your festivals, or come to his Gypsy Jazz his camp. You have a guitar camp, don't you?
Yes, I have a guitar camp, usually end of May. It's been now 2 years. and it's just been beyond any expectation of mine. Just people from all over the world coming, and 4 days, right in Tuscany, right by Lake Trasimeno, and just full days of music, and then great food and sightseeing and everything. Yeah.
It's just been so cool to see, Dario, these things happening, and obviously much more that will happen. And so again, I just want to thank you so much for giving me some time here to talk about these topics. I really appreciate it. Why don't you just quickly say, what's the best way for people to reach you?
My website is darionapoli.com, and then of course there's Facebook page is Dario Napoli Guitar, and the YouTube channel is Dario Napoli Guitar as well. So those are the main, I'm on Instagram as well, and Twitter and all those, but I mainly use Facebook and my website. Yeah.
Thank you again so much for this great conversation. And my name is Chris Goslow. I'm the owner and founder of Piano Lessons in Sacramento, which you can find at pianolessonsinsacramento.com. Again, Dario, I'm so grateful that you came for this awesome interview, and I just wish you the best of luck in everything you do. And thanks again.
Thanks to you, Chris. It's absolutely my pleasure, mate.